Hi everyone, my name is Erica Wood and I'm from the Hopkins County Extension Office and I'm back with another video. And today I'm going to be talking about this plant right here, and that is the poinsettia. Of course, we're getting closer to Christmas, and poinsettias are just out at our garden centers and in our grocery stores right now as some wonderful holiday decor. And so we get a lot of questions as to how to keep your poinsettia alive beyond the holidays, keeping it as a house plant, and then also like how to get it to rebloom for next year. So let's go over, all of those care tips to keep your poinsettia alive long term. All right, so just a little bit of background information. So poinsettias belong to the Euphorbiaceae family, and with the Euphorbiaceae family, most of them exude this milky sap, especially when their stems or their leaves are damaged. So I bring this up because poinsettias in the past have this history of being quite toxic, to pets. And they do have some mild toxicity, although it's not quite as bad as what it used to be considered. Some things that I'll mention is, if you do wound your poinsettia or you're pruning it or you happen to get that milky sap on you, it can cause some skin irritation. So just avoid getting it in your eyes and try to wash your hands or maybe just use gloves. And if an animal consumes this plant, of course, it could cause some irritation to their mouth or tongue, and maybe if it's completely ingested, like any parts of the plant, it may cause some stomach upset. With this plant, it is found native to Central and South America, so into more of our subtropical to tropical regions. And in fact, if you visit any of those places or countries down there, you might see it growing as quite a tall shrub, to the point where it actually grows almost like a really nice hedge. And so these can get to be very big plants long term. And what's interesting about them and their growth habit is, of course, they do have these really lovely deep green leaves with that lovely lighter venation. And then they have actually what are called bracts. And what a bract is it's a modified leaf. And so what you see here, like the colorful parts of your poinsettia, a lot of times people might mistake them for like the petals of the flower, and that's actually not the case. This bract, this colorful part, is actually a leaf. So something interesting to note. And these bracts will surround the flowers, which are very small. There are these little clusters of these yellow-green flowers. And so, with these colorful bracts, it kind of helps to bring in pollinators in its native habitat to close in on those flowers. So the flowers themselves are pretty small and really not as aesthetically pleasing as like the actual bract itself. So, that's kind of the difference there between a actual flower petal and a bract. So that's the overall structure of the plant. Let's talk a little bit about the care tips, such as the light, watering, humidity, things like that. So just to start out with, poinsettias like bright and direct light, okay? They're gonna do well in a fairly lit room for several hours a day. You want to avoid placing it near, say, a window that has southern exposure. That's usually like the hottest and most direct sunlight that you're gonna get in your house. And so that might even be a little too much light for this plant, where it could potentially scorch or, kind of crinkle up those leaves. So if you have it in a south-facing window, maybe push it back further a few feet away from the window, or have some curtains to kind of block out that exposure. But when it comes to other exposure windows, such as east or west facing, this plant's going to do just fine. East facing, it's going to get a lot of that morning sunlight and afternoon shade. West facing, it's going to get that morning shade and afternoon sun. And then, finally you have your north facing windows, and those are kind of the coolest, shadiest parts of the house. And typically that's almost like a little too low light for it. If you have it like in a north facing window, it just may not grow as quickly for you, or the growth may become a little bit more elongated. So just something to keep in mind there. So again, bright and direct light near east or west facing windows are going to be probably your best bet with this plant. Now, when it comes to watering, this plant likes to be evenly moist, okay? Sometimes if you let it dry out too much, it may actually cause some leaf drop, and it may start to wilt a little bit. So you don't want your plant to get to that point. So, just be checking the surface of your soil. And if the surface to the touch is really starting to feel pretty dry, then you'll want to go ahead and water your poinsettia. Now, of course, on the other hand, if the surface is pretty moist, you don't need to water it until it starts to dry out a little bit more, because you don't want to risk over watering it. So again, they like consistent, even moisture. Now, when it comes to humidity, again, this plant is found in the tropics, so it's going to be more used to a humid environment. So if you can get your home humidity to be over 50%, ideally within that 50 to 70% range, that's going to be best for this plant. Of course, I realize that's very difficult, especially during the winter months. But some things you might want to consider is either placing it in a bathroom or kitchen where there's a window and it can get some of that, excess moisture, or place it near a humidifier, or put some plants close together where that will help to increase the humidity around them. Or you can also set aside a little tray or bowl that's full of pebbles, and you fill that with water, and that water will evaporate into the air, and that will help to increase the humidity a little bit for this plant. So just a couple of possible ways that you can increase the humidity for it. And so with that in mind, something to note is, you really don't want to put these near a vent. Our heat's running constantly here in Kentucky during our winter months, and so it's getting a lot of dry air into the room. So avoid placing this plant near a vent, or else it's going to dry out quickly, and it's not going to get the sufficient humidity it needs. And so something like that may also cause leaf drop. So there's a few different factors that are involved that may result in this plant having some of its leaves drop. Let's see, when it comes to things like temperature, room temperature, if it's in the 60s or 70 degrees in your home, that's going to be fine. This plant cannot tolerate cold temperatures. It's not hardy. So you really don't want your nighttime temperatures to drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that's something to keep in mind. Maybe you're keeping this outside during the summer months. Usually they're going to be on a shaded deck or a shaded patio. They don't want to be out in too much bright light, or else they could get scorched. But if you're keeping it outside, just make sure you wait to put it outside till danger of frost has passed, and then bring it inside before our nighttime temperatures really drop in the fall below that 50-degree mark, or else it could have some cold damage. So with that too, inside, avoid putting it near a really cold, drafty window as well. Now, when it comes to other things like fertilizing, just with many other houseplants, you're going to fertilize, during the spring and summer months. Actively every couple of weeks. You can use just your standard liquid houseplant fertilizer, or you can use a water soluble type fertilizer that dissolves in water as you water your plant as needed. Really you're going to stop fertilizing entirely come fall, and you're not fertilizing at all during the winter months. And that is pretty much the case for most houseplants, but especially for poinsettias, if you want them to be blooming properly for you, stop that fertilizer treatment. So let's see. So we covered watering, light conditions, fertilizing. Let's talk about pruning. So with poinsettias, after the holidays, when these flower bracts start to fade, that's when you're going to go ahead and give it a little prune. You're going to cut it. You're going to cut it back, several inches. If it's a very tall poinsettia, you'll cut it back to, about 8 inches tall or so. And so it's going to look very bare, and that may be a bit intimidating. But that's okay, because eventually, especially in a few weeks to a few months, when it starts to get some new growth on it, some active growth, it'll start to bush out again. It'll start to get some more lateral shoots and become a nice, lovely, lush green shrub for you. So don't be afraid to prune it. Of course, don't prune it back to the soil line. That's too much. But definitely cut it back to again where it still has several inches of its stems left over. So, and when it comes to things like repotting, you're going to repot this late spring, early summer. Just pick a pot size that's like 1 to 2 pot sizes above what it's currently in. So let's just say, for instance, it's in a 6-inch pot. You may want to up it then to an 8-inch pot as well. So don't go too far above that, because it doesn't need to be like in too big of a pot before its roots are able to really fill it out. But just go, again, 1 to 2 sizes up is all it really needs. So it's good to keep in mind there. All right, let's get into what a lot of people have wanted to know, and that is, how do I get my poinsettia to rebloom? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It might be a little difficult. This plant is considered a short day plant. So as our day length is decreasing in the fall months, the less light it receives will help to spur it to bloom. And so essentially this plant, really you could say starting October 1st, it's going to need to have 8 to 10 or more weeks of 14 hours of continuous darkness. So let me say that again. 14 hours of continuous darkness, in order to get it to be blooming for you by the time the holidays roll around. And so how do you get continuous darkness? That is definitely a struggle, because we are in the age where a lot of our indoor lights and outdoor lights, like our parking lights, especially if this is near a window, the plant may be able to identify that light with it, based on the wavelengths of that bulb. We have a lot more fluorescent and LED bulbs that this plant, may recognize, and as a result, may not be getting that continuous darkness if those lights remain on even during the nighttime. And so, what you can do to get those 14 hours of darkness is, you could, for one, either move the plant into a room that's completely dark, like maybe a closet, or you could cover the plant up with either some kind of like a box, just like a big box, and cover it up for 14 hours a day for several weeks. And then if you do all that correctly, you may start to see where the new growth comes. You might start to see those colorful red or pink or white, depending on the variety you got, bracts that start to take shape. So, and I'll be honest with you, I have kept poinsettias over the years, year after year, and I have gotten mine to rebloom, but it's never looked quite as full or lush as when I first purchased it. And that's because when you think about it, the plants that you buy here are grown in greenhouses where they have a very controlled environment, and there's different ways to force it into its bloom cycle. And so I would say, don't be discouraged if yours just maybe doesn't get all those colorful bracts like it used to. But I'll say, even though that may be, a little discouraging, this is a really nice plant. This is a really good house plant to keep all year round, becomes a nice lush green shrub, especially if you love foliage. So, don't, don't dispose of your poinsettia too quickly. Try your hands at keeping it alive and seeing if it's worth it to you, because these do make really a very nice house plant long term. So, just kind of all in all, something you can try. All right, well, I think that will about do it for this poinsettia talk. I hope that you found it helpful, and thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.